Welcome. In this video I'm going to demonstrate the system created for my Procedural Content Generation module. So this system aims to determine ways to procedurally generate different animals, creatures, and other entities within Unreal Engine by making use and reuse of different assets to produce different types of entities. I wanted to solve this by investigating how we could create and control variation by using a spline body with different generation templates for different types of creatures to reflect different animals and how they work in real life. I was given a term around 8 weeks to work on this project alongside my dissertation. I prioritized the ability to randomly create a general skeleton based on a spline, which is shaped by hand by the developer. From this base system, developing a creature would determine a set of limbs, including a head and tail based on the specified type, and apply a material to that creature. Just a quick thing, if I take this one, there we go. There's a quadrupedal creature. So with additional time, I would have investigated adding random features to the skeleton, such as like facial features over here, claws, spikes, maybe on like the legs or on the back, horns, anything else that a given project might need. Other possible avenues for improvement would include additions for gameplay, things like procedural animation, behaviors, attributes based on the generated features, such as a carnivore having being determined by the type of jaws or the eyes applied, and possibly I would like to include the ability to generate a custom creature based on a set of properties that doesn't rely on the preset enum of creature types here. So within my technical design document, I've also included details on my research and the other solutions that I considered during development. So this project was quite closely inspired by the likes of Spore, and for the implementation, I closely followed the research by Alex Christo in his master's thesis on procedural creature generation and animation for games, which is a very interesting read. Unfortunately, I obviously could not include the animation side of things with this amount of time, this scope. This TDD also has more in-depth details about the plans for this system and its requirements. So here's the general UML diagram. Here are some of the overall engine requirements, the logic, ideas for the audio, the visual requirements, and so on. So going back to Unreal and loading this prototyping scene, um, it's had a couple different little prototypes from the start of development. I looked into using the PCG plugin by Unreal over here, which is still an experimental plugin, but was the main focus of a lot of the teaching in the module. I couldn't quite get the scaling working with this system, so as you can see, it's sort of just a flat line. If I changed the scale of a point, it didn't reflect it, and I couldn't really figure out how to do so without it would just make one section of it a lot bigger, which wasn't really what I was going for. And the head and the tail, as you can see here, this being the head, this cone being the tail, they're kind of disjointed in a way that I didn't really fit the project. Also with that, I tried a solution using a mesh sampler, but I couldn't get an effect working that I liked since it produced an effect like simulating fur, so I scrapped it, and I'm not really showing it here. I also looked into using mesh deformation, so I looked into how you can do that in Unreal. I couldn't. I wondered if it would help with the development tool, but I didn't really end up using the system in the end because I couldn't find anywhere that it might apply, at least in the way that I knew how to do it. So I eventually wound up on an initial prototype that looked something like this. So by generating these spline mesh components here, I have a lot more control over what the body looks like, how it's shaped, how it's sized. If I change a point here, 2, 3, 3, 3, you can see that the shape of the body sort of changes to reflect the new size, and it looks a lot smoother. Being able to edit it at a blueprint level directly gave me a lot more control over things like how the head was placed here, how the tail is. Of course, this isn't enough for a final polished project, but it felt like a good enough basis for development into the more polished prototype, which you can see in here. So the polished prototype differs from the vertical prototypes with the additional functionality to generate these limbs. So as opposed to just the head and the tail as in the original prototype, This also adds the ability to change the type of the creature generated, which changes the sorts of limbs that are added, adds supports for different materials as well. So if I just generate this, it sort of creates a very similar thing here, and that's because the different placements are weighted based on the size of the spline. So legs will always spawn on the bipedal creatures at the widest point, then the arms at the next widest point. And this is a similar priority for the other limbs as well, for other types. So this is a ground bug, as you can see, it can have a lot of different legs, but it will place them in the order of that size. So the system has a simple interface over in the PCG section of the details pane. So you just use the creature type. So let's go with the flying one this time and click generate. And oh look, it's added another set of legs. It's added the wings here. And then if you really want to have a clear look at your spline again, you can just clean it all up and then it's all gone. So under the hood, it's pretty simple. Let me grab the spline. So, base parts, spline. So here we've got in the construction script, it will clear all of the older components. It will determine what the scaled length is for the general spline. It will loop through every single point, and at each interval of this set section length, scale length, and then it will add a spline mesh component to each. And then it also sets up the head and the tail points as well. This goes for any spline, so it would just be the top or bottom half of it. So it updates as you edit and allows you to generate some pretty flexible skeletons. You can also scale the individual points, like I said before. So back in the creature itself, there's a lot more logic here, but it's all of the generation logic is based on this spline. So each different type has simple rules to determine how the different limbs are placed and what parts are added. So, for instance, some bipedal creatures don't have tails, but some do, and they do have arms, which the quadrupeds don't. So the limbs themselves, pretty much all of these are placed in the order of the size of the body at a given point, which is based on the square magnitude of the scale at that point. We'll place the limbs at the largest point first, then the next, and then so on. So limbs that come in pairs are set up using the setup pair function, which is essentially just a quick way to add two things at basically the same point and flip them. Some of these use a position, rotation, or scale offset of some additional tweaking. So, for instance, the position is offset by about 10 for the fins on the fish, multiplied by the scale of the current point on the spline. So if I quickly make a fish here, generate, you'll see that these are sort of sticking out, but they're still kind of connected to the body. Obviously, if I were using actual assets, then I would be able to tweak this a lot more so that it looked a lot more natural. I did it this way because I needed to determine some logic for limb placement, and I wanted it to be vaguely grounded in real physics. Even if the system doesn't implement any of those physics at the moment, that sort of thing would be added with the procedural animation. The way that the materials work is that the main body will randomly select a material from this list of possible materials, and this will be provided to any parts that don't have a preset material so that they match the main body. So if I select a quadruped again, you'll notice that this leg shares the same material, but this one has this black material preset, so it doesn't change. So back in the design document over here, I put a lot of detail into the user manual so that the system could be better developed in future. I've left a few instructions on how to set up parts. If I go down here, how to set up parts, how to generate a creature, what each existing part and blueprint does. I've also included full API details regarding the different types and their properties and functions. I've also, at the end here, gone over some more in-depth details, possible improvements could be made to the system based on missing features from the original plan and features that were scoped out. I feel this sort of system could be developed to work quite well in a commercial game with a bit more time and a lot more polish. So With that, I believe I've covered the problem, the solution, my documentation, and the different prototypes involved during the creation of this project. Any details that might have been missed are likely documented in my technical design document or in my module development thread if not. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for taking the time to review my project.